Alright, I've got just one thing to say. Thank you guys so much for not making me review Ben Platt's album. What is that? What is this? This album came out on May 31st, but it's the 4th? I forgot? No, I did not forget. In fact, May 31st was my birthday, and I was too depressed to make a video review, so that's why you're getting it now. Anyways, welcome back everyone to First Impressions. It's the show where we review albums one day after they come out, except today. Whoops. I'm your host Gavin, welcome back. Today, you'll notice I don't have a Sprite like normal. I have today instead Virgil's Cream Soda. This stuff is so good. Anyways, that's off topic. Today we are reviewing an album put out a couple days ago by Maya Hawke. This is Chaos Angel. Chaos Angel is Maya Hawke's third album, coming after, I believe, Blush and then Moss, which were two of her earlier albums. This one having a more interesting title for sure, but of course we aren't here to judge titles, we are here to judge albums. Also, you guys voted for this over Willie Nelson and Ben Platt. Thank you so much for not picking Ben Platt's album. If you guys want to vote on future album reviews, follow my Instagram. Anyway, let's get right into this. So, Maya Hawke, of course, is mostly known for her acting, being an actor in Stranger Things, more recently Asteroid City, the Wes Anderson film, and so her acting has kind of been what got her onto the public eye. But, of course, she also does have very famous parents, being Ethan Hawke and Uma Thurman, two very prolific actors of the 90s and 2000s. But she's had some decent releases so far. Blush and Moss were very much not quite polished and not at that high level, of course, but whose first album really is. It did, however, interest me because those two albums did show that she is a talented songwriter who knows what her songwriting strengths are, and we've sort of seen that develop over the last two albums. Especially with that second album. I do think carrying over into this album, we are starting to see that develop even further, and that is really something that is really we want to see, because once an artist finds their songwriting style, they can really take off. And so going into this, I was really excited to see how that develops. The first thing I noticed about this album is it's very short. It's only 35 minutes long, being short for an album in general, but also the shortest of her three albums. It's only 10 tracks, so it's keeping it very brief, sort of in that. It's sort of comparable to Billie Eilish's new album in that way, which is not a bad thing whatsoever. I appreciate short albums because I think they know what they are. There's some great short albums out there. One of my favorite albums of all time, Alice in Chains' Jar of Flies. Very short album, somewhere around 35 minutes as well. I always prefer an album that is more concise than bloated, because I feel like you can really take more time with each song and make them special. And so I was very intrigued going into this to see how this album developed. This album opens with the track Black Ice, which I gave a high 5. It didn't really wow me whatsoever. It reminds me a ton of Skinny, which is continuing to draw parallels to Billie Eilish's recent album, Hit Me Hard and Soft, which is not a bad thing by any means, except for the problem that Billie has Phineas producing. So of course, Billie is going to put out a more refined track than Black Ice, but Black Ice is not bad by any means. It's just not pulled off quite as well. It's unfortunate because I feel like if Billie's recent album didn't exist, I might rank this one slightly higher, but this one is just very overshadowed by similar songs that do this concept better. Not just Billie Eilish, but other tracks as well. And so here we are. This is still a very good song, but it's simply outshined by other songs which do the same thing better, hence the high 5 rating. High five, high five. It's a horrible joke, anyways. Overall, the songwriting's nice, and there's some nice imagery, but the other aspects are just so-so, which bring it down. The second track is called Dark. I gave it a middle 7. Maya Hawke did talk about this one in interviews recently. I do believe it was a single, but I'm not sure on that. Dark just sticks out a lot more than the first track on this album. There's a mid-song change-up, which I really enjoyed, and it didn't feel out of place at all. And the songwriting overall is very strong. At the end of the song, the lyricism falters a little bit and kind of gets a little bit It isn't detrimental or anything like that. It stands out as its own thing a lot more than Black Ice, which I can appreciate a lot more. Black Ice fell into monotony, where this one kind of stands out, has that oomph, and so I think it is a significant improvement, and overall it's quite nice. Missing Out, I only gave a middle 4. Giving a song a 4 essentially means the song is lacking to me. Not bad, just lacking. And that's exactly what I thought here. As far as the groove goes, it's a light bop in its own right, as it has that groove. but it's just not enough to get me terribly excited. It's just enough to bring it out of that 3 zone, you know? This song is just kind of nothing. The lyrics feel like they were whipped up real quick. There isn't much momentum in the song, or really a direction it heads in. It feels like it has no anticipation for what's coming next. It's fine, I guess, and the synth part is neat, and there is a groove here, as I stated earlier, but overall it doesn't offer me anything of value that I could detect. Wrong Again is the 4th track on this album, and it really started to get me hopeful for the rest of it. I gave it a high 8. I quite enjoyed it. Wrong Again really stood out as just a really nice piece of songwriting. There's some really nice imagery in the lyrical content, and the production is extremely crisp. Every aspect of the song just pops in its own way. The first verse does struggle to get off the ground a little bit for me in its lyrics and its direction. But once it gets past that first little speed bump, with the melody being kind of blah in the beginning as well, it does really take off quite quick after that first little hump. And I think it develops into a really, really nice song. Very well produced, too, on that end. Mixed well, produced well, has a nice direction. And yeah, except for that speed bump, it is an incredible song. And it's a super catchy pop track that I really enjoy. Hitting the middle of the album here, track 5 is called OK. I only gave it a low 6. OK is generally a pretty forgettable track, but it certainly has its shining moments. The lyrics are not the focus here, as it's the same line repeated over and over for the majority of the song, and that's fine. I like songs where it changes up and the lyrics are no longer the focus, kind of to give a palate cleanser in the middle of the album, and I generally like that idea. However, the main detriment is that I'm not sure what the focus is supposed to be instead, other than the lyrics. There is a brief instrumental in the middle, which does have some originality to it, what I kind of like, except that the guitar tone was weird as hell and not in a good way. And there's moments that jump out at me for sure, such as the chord structure being quite nice. But there is just a piece that is missing here. It feels like if you take away Maya Hawke's lyricism, there's not much to offer, and that's kind of what I got out of this idea. And that's not exactly a very good idea to have. And I do not feel like every Maya Hawke track is missing everything except lyricism. It's just this one, and it gives you kind of a false impression of what type of artist Maya Hawke is, where it's all lyrics and no instrumental, which I don't feel like that is what Maya Hawke is like at all. And so it's just kind of a false impression. Has its shining moments, and a 6 might honestly be a bit high, but for now we're sticking with that 6. Track 6, we're now getting over the midway turnaround of the album, and we are getting into the interlude track, being only a minute long. I gave this one a high 3. I thought it was quite not good. This song had a lot of potential. It's a minute-long interlude with a repeating structure, which you see often. But I'm sorry, there's these purposefully auto-tuned, like, really overproduced vocals, and it's very purposeful. I mean, you wouldn't do this unless it was a purposeful artistic choice. But it's not a good artistic choice. It just comes across as corny, and I was not able to get past it at all, which is a very bad sign. I feel like there is a decent track hidden under these layers of wacky, unfocused production, but it just doesn't come across well at all, and there's something hidden under here that just doesn't come through, is the bottom line. And so, hence the high 3. The production is weak. There's these really stupid artistic choices that don't fit into the album at all. We don't see these artistic choices anywhere else in this album, and it just comes across as a dud. Big Idea, I gave a low 7. I feel like the album gets right back to form after this. Big Idea is a song with some strong ideas. I didn't realize my script says Big Idea has some strong ideas. That's not very... Never mind. It just feels pretty disconnected. There's some neat lyrical ideas, nothing incredible, but some very, very strong concepts. And the instrumentation is very interesting. It's essentially 2 acoustic guitars that are both hard panned to one ear, which gives this sort of unique, contrasted idea, which I really liked. And there's this really cool slide guitar going up the middle that kind of pulls it all together, which I thought was really neat. And the slide guitar is doing some neat things, adding some spice to the album, something we haven't really heard before but doesn't feel out of place whatsoever. However, a big note I had for this song is that the odd synthesizer parts that just come out of nowhere and feel out of place just don't fit at all. They feel horrifically uninspired, fit into the song poorly, and then the melodies delivered by the synths just kind of die out and don't really come back. And so this is just a song that had some really, really strong concepts I really had my interest piqued by, but ultimately they just falter in the cohesive department and just don't come together very well. And so I do feel like it is an enjoyable listen, but it could have been a lot better. Track number 8, Hang In There, I gave a low 8. This song really sticks out for its super strong melody. It's a very memorable tune with some nice instrumentals. The bass guitar also is doing some really nice fills and runs in this song, which being a bassist I can appreciate heavily. And there's these really cool glockenspiel hits that don't feel tacky at all. They're very tasteful and soft and really match the album really well. I feel like this is a very cohesive track, which I really enjoyed. And overall, it's just a strong entry to the album. It's not revolutionary by any means. It feels... It has kind of been done before to a degree, but it's a very original, interesting track. Track number 9 is Promise. I gave it a low 4. It's kind of a dud. It has some decent lyrics and not much else. It comes across as being just a bit vapid, as it doesn't seem to develop the chops that it needs to as the song goes on. And there is something detrimental to this track, which is that there's instrumental repetition that just doesn't go anywhere, and feels a bit on the dull side for the duration of the track. I can appreciate it for keeping itself short. I just think the length is right where it should be, and that's not exactly a great compliment to be having, that the length is where it should be. That's not something you really want to be associated with their track, and so I just feel like this one falls flat, as there's not much to offer here whatsoever. And so this brings us to our last track, Chaos Angel. It was decent, I gave it a middle 7. The closer on this album takes a little while to get off the ground, but it does come together, and it is strong once it gets going. I do understand why it's a slow burn, as the lyrical content really reflects the increasing emotion in the song, and I feel like I can get past the kind of slow start, as it does take off quite nicely once it does take off. It's not Maya Hawke's best songwriting by any means, but it serves as a decent finale to the album, and while nothing special, does wrap up the album nicely and puts a bow on this project. So that's what I thought of each individual track. We got through that pretty quickly, actually. Here is the best and worst song. The best song I thought was Hang In There. I thought it was very strong, a nice piece of pop songwriting, and just really has some promise for what Maya Hawke can do next. Because I feel like this is just a strong piece of development for her, as she has her lyrical strengths there from the get-go on this song, but really brings up that production and that chord structure and that accompaniment to the next level, which I feel like is what we've been waiting for from Maya Hawke for a while now. And so this album shows promise, but this song really encapsulates that. The worst song on this track is definitely Better. I know it's an interlude, but it's just a ruined concept that doesn't fit into the narrative structure or the album structure in general whatsoever, and it just comes across as a weak entry which is incredibly forgettable and not good. As for what I thought of this album as a whole, I think this is really starting to show how Maya Hawke is hitting her stride better and is really going for that greatness that I think she is very capable of doing, especially on a 4th album, whenever that comes out in a couple years. And she's really showing what she can do. She continues to hold on to what was promising in her 1st and 2nd albums, that being her impressive metaphors and imagery, but really takes the other parts that were lacking in those albums up to the next level. There are still certainly low points and some odd creative choices in areas, but I feel like these are kinks that could be ironed out pretty well in a future project. I think this album does stand out in the acoustic pop scene as a really nice entry for the genre and something that stands out pretty well. I think if she continues down this path in the pursuit of excellence, we can really see some very strong projects out of her later. For now, I think this is a really nice piece of development. Like I said, it's bogged down a bit by those low lows, but I feel like those can really be swept aside as she continues down her path as an artist. And unfortunately, it's never a benefit to have what I believe to be the stronger half of the album be the second half of the album. Typically, you want your stronger material to come out first, but ultimately that's not a horrific detriment to the album, just a kind of note, you know? I'm seeing a lot of promise here, and I'm excited to see what comes next, and I am thinking a low to middle 7. I really liked it. It's some very nice work. So anyway, that's gonna about do it for this album review. June should be really boring for music. I'm not seeing any releases that really interest me, besides a couple. But June should be boring, so expect some boring album releases. I'm not making my channel sound very interesting here, am I? I should probably stop talking before I get in trouble. I'll catch you in the next one. Thanks for watching. Bye.